being kind was also something then that I would lose myself from, like, just to make sure others, like kindness meant like making sure others were happy or taken care of. And since then,
yeah, that's a really big one. And I think what you're talking about, Becky, is the difference between being kind and being nice. And you also brought up that the D word, doormat. And that's so often where like I for years was convinced that I wasn't kind because I'm not this like soft and like sing-songy sort of lady, right? And it took years, and in fact, hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Relationships Done Different podcast. I'm one of your four beautiful hosts, Paula Peralta. I'm here with Becky, Christopher Hughes, and the wonderful Justine McKell. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Paula.
How you doing?
What are we talking about today?
I love it. Okay, so I want to start off by talking about how I woke up early this morning and I had another interview for Relationships Done Different, actually. And as I was jumping off that one, my phone started to ring and it was Chris. And I was really interested to see that Chris was calling me because I knew we were actually scheduled to record this podcast. And so I answered the phone and I said, hello. And he said, hi, honey, how you doing? What you up to? And I said, I know, I'll be right there. I just got off my other interview and I'm grabbing some water. And so he was like, okay, cool. We just wanted to make sure, whatever. And so we hung up. We all got on this recording now. Hello. What was interesting is, and I just brought this up with the group, is that I actually hung up from that call so like nurtured, inspired, delighted, enthused to come have this conversation because of the kindness that Chris was willing to be. So Chris, I'm going to publicly acknowledge you first. Thank you for delivering that conversation with such kindness. And it actually, this is something that's been so up for me lately, is like, what is kindness really? And how can we use it? How can we receive more of it? And where is it nothing like we've been taught or told that kindness actually is? So I know that's a lot, but it's like, what if kindness is nothing that you ever thought it was? And what if it could be even more than you've ever realized? So I should talk about kindness.
No, I love what you said, because normally people approach you like, where are you? The call's on now. And you just get more and more stressed. And so you even talking about this is such an invitation. I'm like, yeah, like I would like some more of that, please. And what else could you create? And it just, you're creating from such a different space right now. And when you were talking about kindness, I was like, oh my gosh, it's not something I really asked for. I think I naturally be kindness, but when I was looking at kindness, the person I think is wonderfully kind in business is Simone, one of the co-creators of Relationship Done Different. And kindness, and you guys being on her Gaggle could talk to this more, but I see her deliver kindness, which might by letting someone go off her team, or even how she approaches people. Like, is this actually working for you? Like, I don't know if you've got more examples on that, but I just see her doing it from a different perspective.
I do. Like, there's something that came up recently for me, and I was so grateful for her. It was on a call, the body. She's doing a body series, and there was not a lot of people registered, and they weren't coming on the calls. And she came on, and she was just this energy of, "What are we doing here? Am I going to keep this going?" And she really just, for me, kind of stated what was up for her, what she was aware of. And I personally, like, that was so kind to her, and then kind to everyone, even though like you could have perceived it as, so like, where we looked at, well, kindness, like the tone, or it's like kindness, like, oh, hi, sweetie, because it wasn't that. It was a demand. It was like, we need to talk here. Like, what is happening? Let's ask questions. And a little bit fast forward, I thanked her because I said, like, I've never had that experience before. I didn't grow up with, and I guess maybe men or women, but I said particularly women that were willing to be that energy, one, honoring themselves, delivering it with kindness, but had this demand in their world. And I never had that experience before. And for me, it's kind of like what Paula bring up in the beginning, where I was listening to, Chris talk to her, and I was like, oh, I'll have that. I don't know. It was really truly like this. I'll have that. I'll have someone call me or be that energy with me too. And so with Simone, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I was like, wow, you can do that. Like, that can be a possibility. You can actually just tell people like what you're aware of, ask questions, and it still be kind to you.
I kind of think kindness has to look a certain way, or been
Yeah.
one kindness.
Yeah. And I think somewhere along the lines, when I was younger, I decided, being kind was also something then that I would lose myself from, like, just to make sure others, like kindness meant like making sure others were happy or taken care of. And since then,
yeah, that's a really big one. And I think what you're talking about, Becky, is the difference between being kind and being nice. And you also brought up that the D word, doormat. And that's so often where like I, for years was convinced that I wasn't kind because I'm not this like soft and like sing-songy sort of lady, right? And it took years. And in fact, I remember specifically once Simone said to me, you are one of the most kind people. Like, you have such a capacity for kindness. And I was like, what? But it opened up, that acknowledgement actually opened up, that was a kindness to me. And she's demanding. Like, Simone is one of the most demanding people I've ever created with. And I have grown more as a result of it. And so that to me is a kindness that she's delivered, being willing, exactly like you said, Becky, being willing to have her back. Chris, one of the things, speaking of like the most kind people, I've seen you, I don't think I've seen anyone with more allowance ever, and kindness and the willingness to be what's required than you, honestly. And I've heard you often say that you're asking for more kind and happy people and fun people to show up in your life. And can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what does that mean? What is that? Can I do that?
Absolutely, you can. I hope everybody does. The thing that first interested me in access consciousness, that made me go, okay, these classes, I'm going to give them a shot, because I was more than a little bit suspect at first. I was like, no, not another one of these fucking courses. But one of the biggest premises was ask and you shall receive. And I've always known since I was a kid that that's how the universe works, and that you can create absolutely anything you ask for. So I actually stole this from Claudia Cano, another friend, and she was like, yeah, I just keep asking for more kind, fun people. And I was like, that's a pretty good thing to ask for. So I've been doing the same constantly. I'm like, okay, what would it take to surround myself with kind, caring, creative people?
Yeah, I'll have that.
If that was your environment and your reality. But I want to talk a little bit too about some of the other things you guys have already brought up. One of the biggest areas where relationships seem to fall apart or people get into problems is communication, and knowing how to say something like, yeah, I called you because I wasn't sure that you knew this was on. I was just wanting to make sure. And there was nowhere in my world, whether you knew it was on or wasn't, that you were wrong or right. But I had a conversation with a friend last week, and I have one of the businesses I have is an antique shop in Brisbane. And I have lots of friends who also have similar businesses, opticians, hair salons, other retail shops. And this friend, he called me and he had so much to complain about with his staff. And he kept going on about, I just feel like I'm looking after kids and constantly reminding them of the basics and the things they're getting wrong. And I said to him, so are you judging them? And he kept going on about, well, I just feel like I'm looking after kids. And I went, so are you judging them? And he was like, yeah, maybe. He's like, what do I got to do? Fire one of them to show them that I mean business? And I'm like, oh, so you're going to manage your shop with a loaded gun? Is that really going to be how you communicate and empower them? And to me, I've always had a really easy and fun time with working with staff in particular, because I'm nice to them. And not nice like you said before,
What?
like nice is such a funny loaded word. I saw this great meme on the internet last week, and it was a map of America divided into 4 quadrants. And it was like the American South, like, you know, Texas and Florida and all these places. It said, acts nice is mean. And then it goes up to like where New York is, the other side, and it says, acts mean is nice, and goes through. I can't remember what the other 2 were, but you're right. Nice is a highly loaded word. But I'm always interested in what my staff and friends know. I'm not interested in telling them what to do, in micromanaging their day, in dictating to them. To me, I want to empower everybody, friend, staff, colleague, whatever, stranger. I want to empower them to what they know and to have the greatest life they possibly can. Is that where kindness comes from? Yeah, maybe. Like, I'm not interested in having relationships with people where we're constantly judging each other and nitpicking and nagging about what you've done wrong.
Yeah.
And if you take the judgment and the wrongness out, what's there to pick at? And if there's no judgment, what does communication then look like? When you are doing, as you guys gave the example with Simone, when you're asking for what you require, or even like being that energy of what you demand and what you're reaching for. We've seen like the Devil Wears Prada version of that, you know, where the Miranda Priestley's or the Anna Wintour character in that movie, who she's this massive, like cold, ball-breaking bitch to get what she wants. And I would say that Simone is every bit as effective a CEO of a corporation, but without judgment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Justine, I know you have some littles, and it's interesting because I don't ever remember. I remember being taught to be nice, but I don't know that I was ever taught really to be kind. It was something I definitely had to like learn and explore myself. So, as the mother of some nuggets, what's it like? Like, are you aware of teaching your children to be kind? Is that like conversations that you have? Is it just like you roll the dice and hope it works out, or like how does that work?
Well, yeah, before I get to that, because I was looking at like, I think naturally I am kind to everyone, like that's who I be, but there's another bit of that kindness that to the expense of me, like I put myself in pain, or I would, like, I remember Jane saying to me, like, you would give your shirt off your back for anyone. And it's so true. I would, but then I also go, am I being the martyr, or is there a downside to kindness? Or yeah, what actually is that kindness? Because I like, Chris, when you were saying, when you remove the judgment, like beyond that is just, I guess, space and that yumminess of kindness with, yeah, that communication. That was so lovely how you put that. So yeah, I was just looking at kindness, like, is kindness, yeah, has it been a negative thing to me because I've, you know, put myself back in the back seat to be kind to other people? So then I guess looking at that with my kids, we have always taught, like, I guess our little one's a bit too young, but just, I don't know if it's respect. Like there's so many different words around kindness. So it would be respectful and to be aware of everyone's feelings. Like if someone is sad or is bullied, like I think she goes up to them and sees if they're okay. And that's the feedback I always get from the teachers. So I think it's just, we've always taught her to, yeah, just be aware and check in with everyone else around her and trying to value kindness. Yeah. So little girls can be everything. She can be everything. She can be mean, but she can also be really kind. So I don't know if that's answered the question, but yeah, it's so interesting what kindness does bring up.
Well, it sounds like you're letting her be her too. Like, so, you know, it's not like you're like, okay, so if someone's hurt, go pick them up, you know, like she's just naturally sort of starting to lend herself towards that nurturing. So yeah, I'm just always curious about that. I mean, like I said, I don't have children, but I see, you can always see the kids that are really kind. And one of the things that I've seen, and one of the things that's always encouraged me to more kindness, even as an adult, is when people are choosing to be kind to themselves. And Becky, is that something that you're willing to, or that you can talk about, like that thing of like, what does it look like to be kind to you?
That's a great question. Well, you know, I don't know about me, but when you were kind of like looking through, now my kids are older, are 23. I have two girls, 23, 21, and my son's 16. And I was looking at like, wow, is this something that I taught them, like to be kind? And, you know, I was a really different mom for sure. I always hated being told what to do when I was young, like with a passion. So with them, I always gave them like, a lot of choice, a lot of choice. And if I'm looking at them now as, you know, growing up, I was like, are they kind? The one thing that I have to say with them is they do have the kindness with themselves. Like they don't always fit in. They definitely don't fit into my boxes or something. Like my mom came over the other day, and my older daughter is very, I would say autistic a bit. Like she's not like real touchy feely, and my mom's coming at her like, you know, for like a hug. And I'm watching my daughter, she's going, backing up. And I've always let them be them. Like if they don't want to hug in that moment, I'm not like, you don't have to hug and kiss your grandma. Well, my mom then says, you know, it takes it very personal. Like you don't love me, you know, then goes into all these different manipulations. And unfortunately, my kids have some great tools. So they know when they're being manipulated, and they'll be like, don't manipulate me. Like they just have this sense of self where they have their own back, but yet it's the kindness to them. And, you know, but they're not giving themselves up because my mom is saying, you don't love me, you hurt my feelings, like you hate me. I mean, she pours it on, and she's like, yeah, no, none of that. I just don't like to hug. Like it just doesn't, you know, it just doesn't work for her.
That's awesome.
So being kind, when you asked me about being kind, I think really truly like kindness is having your back too.
I think it's interesting, like this conversation around kindness and kindness to you is it can be such an invitation if you don't make it a condemnation. And that's one of the things, like we can all be really unkind. And we can all be really, really kind. So look at the places where it's like, if you weren't making yourself wrong for the times where you're not kind, like what kindness can you be? What kindness can you receive? And like, what if, you know, you just
and how often are you unkind to yourself to maintain the illusion of being nice?
And everything that is right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys, pomads, and beyonds. That's the clearing statement. If you want to know more, go to clearingstatement.com. Basically, what just happened is Chris with that question brought some shit up. So we just used the clearing statement to be like, okay, cool. There it is. And then we can sweep it away and keep creating our life.
No, like, okay, so I'll just be real for a minute here. I just recently ended a relationship that seriously wasn't working. It wasn't my marriage, it was something else. And the willingness to say, you know what, this is actually really not kind to me. And I didn't use those words when I broke things off, but I just was like, hey, you've got to go. And it was so kind to me. It may not have been what was desired to be heard, and it may have seemed somewhat not very nice at the time, but it actually was so required and such a kindness. Like, oh, the amount of things that we've all done in our lives out of obligation to be nice, and it just was not kind, is staggering, really.
How did you know, Chris, like when that came up, like how did you know what would be kind for you? Like if someone's listening to this and they're like, okay, I'll have more of that, like how can I become aware of?
Well, I had to look at every part of the relationship and go, hang on, what is actually in this for me? where and how is this actually contributing to me? Is this doing me any favors? Is this contributing to my life at all? No. Am I constantly giving and giving and giving and not actually receiving anything for it? And it wasn't really giving, because it was just stuff being taken. And I don't mean stuff necessarily, but energy, like whatever. And so I just looked at it and I went, well, I could keep doing this and I could be nice and not create any kind of conflict or any kind of discomfort, or I can say, I'm done right now. And that was actually the kindest thing for everybody.
Yep. I love that.
And it's so kind. What are you going to choose? Because there is such a misidentification. And I think you hit the nail, Chris, like that kindness to you. It might not be comfortable.
And it goes back to like this whole thing about kindness is that when you're willing to be that energy for you, you show other people that it's possible. So, and even circling all the way back to the opening of our conversation, like Chris being that kindness with me for that phone call, and even, you know, Becky, you mentioned it, like you witnessing that, it has forever changed, and you acknowledge this too, Justine, like it forever changed the way that I'm choosing to interact with people. Like I was like, oh, okay, there's a way to do this with kindness that actually creates greater for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a really cool, I mean, if that's not a testament to kindness, I don't know what is.
I don't know if you guys know Cass Thomas. She's been a facilitator of Access Consciousness for a long time. She's originally American, but she's lived in Rome forever. And she told me this story once about, she was waiting in line at a restaurant, and she was her and her friend, and there was two Black ladies in this restaurant. And the hostess kind of ignored them and moved past them and grabbed this pair of people behind them who were both white. And Cass's friend got really angry and wanted to like make a scene and go, you guys are wrong. How dare you do this to us? You're dismissing us and ignoring us because we're Black. And Cass's way of handling the situation, just like you said now, Paula, changed me forever. Because Cass, instead of getting angry, she turned to the hostess and she said, oh, I'm sorry, dear. You must not have seen us or noticed that we were here before them. Would it be possible for you to serve us now? And I was just like, that is so kind. Mm-hmm. And you asked for exactly what you desire and deserve.
And that's true kindness.
Mm.
Absolutely. Asking for what you desire and deserve. Kindness to everyone around you as well. So it all starts there. I love this. I'm so grateful for this conversation. It did not go where I thought it was going to, but I'm actually really grateful for that. So thank you. The three of you are so brilliant. It's my pleasure and absolute honor to have these conversations with you. If you are listening now, thank you so much for joining us, and make sure that you're check us out on all of our platforms. You can go to Instagram, Facebook, Relationships Done Different. And if you're looking for a class, a little bit of a deeper dive into the magic and possibilities of relationships, you can go to relationshipsdonedifferent.com and see all of the possibilities there. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.